Hello, world. Frida Reva Darcy and Patricia O'Connor here. Today is a absolutely beautiful day. I think that is a really nice color of blue. It is a really nice day on our balcony. Today's show is going to be about the balcony. It's my garden, and how do I pull this off? And how did we get here? How did we get to this? First of all, I have had people before go, wow, I would lose those trees if I had, like, I'm 4 floors up, so the security part is not really an issue. What this started off being, this show's going to be about the mechanics of the balcony. There might be a little more than what meets the eye here, or perhaps some of it needs some. You got some explaining to do. So this is kind of the lowdown of that. That white rail there is the rail for that made by the apartment. You can see it down there. I originally wanted to plant some wisterias and have them go through those slats. The landlord at the time, who was a really cute fella, who let me use cute, he was a very handsome man, who was a hard negotiator, but he liked my bonsai trees. But every once in a while, they would go through and send a memo and tell everybody to get their little plants off the rail. Those rails, because they were renovating the apartments and doing this and doing that, and they didn't want them, So whenever people would complain or push back, that they would say, okay, well, make sure you have a drip tray underneath them. So it was so at one point I actually had, now this is huge, this is pretty big. I had these trees sitting on that white rail, down there on that end, down there on that end. And they're like, yeah, I know. Ixnay on that. I'm like, that thing weighs like a V8 motor weighs. It's not gonna go any. And then I started thinking about it. In the event of an earthquake, the building would maybe rock out, and then as it comes back, that might stay out there. And I thought, okay, we'll get it down. So I got it down, and then I noticed, like, this is noon, and the foliage here is in light. The sun, let's see, the sun, you can almost see a little brightening there. Yeah, there it is. So these guys get sun, but there's also a roof overhead, so they're not getting full sun. The sun doesn't reach all the way back in here. It starts to reach back in here as we march from spring to summer, from summer to fall. The sun arcs farther and farther and farther out that way, which means it reaches farther in on the trees. But as it does that, the sun is getting oranger and oranger as we approach fall. The sun that says it's spring, the sun that says wake up, let's go, let's make photosynthesis, that sun tends to stay more straight overhead, and as such, we can see a shadow right in here. These guys are actually still in the sun. This guy isn't. It stops right about here. Right in here is where I stopped getting sun. So my whole collection could be just raked right over here to the rail and then constantly rotated, because all of these are sun-hungry trees. They would all to not get weakened, they would all need to be in direct light for a minimum of 6 hours a day. A minimum. That's not the best, but that's the minimum requirement would be if you've got 6 hours. So with that in mind, also what other restrictions do we have? So I have a light restriction somewhat. And that is when it comes to, like I said, the sun hungry. Where I'm standing now, you can kind of see the, we can see the shadow. The farther down you go, the farther in that light reaches. Kind of makes a V. You can see the V on the wall there, right? But this is also the answer. Maples can grow in the shade and be just fine in the shade of other trees. Kind of prefer that. A lot of times a maple in direct sun could use a little shade. We'd put up shade cloth to keep it happy. So just because it isn't blazing and blasting like a laser beam in here on this part of the rail doesn't mean that it's not good place for growing. So but rather than have to worry about that, rather than we also have wind to consider. I'm 4 floors up, so I'm kind of lucky. On one hand, I'm really close to the water, and so we're going to have breeze coming off the ocean a lot. My wind conditions here are just even a little different than what's advertised on the news, because not everybody is right on the damn beach. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, this building is kind of almost laid out like a fortress. These buildings make a box, and I'm on the inside of it. So it whips through here, but it's not so bad. And usually our winds aren't anything too bad. Sometimes my lights swing in the breeze a little, but that was my answer to whenever I decided to move these trees down. I already owned a pair of fluorescent 4-foot LEDs. They weren't really fluorescents; they were LEDs, but they look like fluorescents, and they were the fluorescent 4-foot fixture that that we all know so well. But and it was a 4-foot 4-light fluorescent. So I had 2 of those, and for those 2 lights, I basically made this rig. But I didn't, and because I owned those lights already, I just went ahead and built this rig. And by this rig, I mean these pieces of pipe conduit that I spanned across there, and then the lights are suspended. But remember, like I was saying, these were originally fluorescents, and they were fluorescent grow lights. But I was really concerned because fluorescents have this, and I don't really know how the LEDs do on that, but the old fluorescents that they were replicating would have a problem with throw. Throw is the amount of distance from the light bulb that we actually get. So they would tell you that the light can produce this amount of light, and you would read that figure and think, well, that's great. That's more than enough light. But that's if it's right next to the thing. If you actually get a usable length away, you'll see that light falls off dramatically as it goes down. So I didn't want, even though that was a foot in the door, and that's what kind of was a good reason to build the overhead rack, and that was a good reason to set up the timers, and that was a good reason to start, investing thought into that. I didn't have those fluorescents going, but just a few weeks. And incidentally, those of you who have seen me pop pine trees seeds in the kitchen, that's one of the 2 fluorescents that I had strung up here. And I was basically just kind of had them strung up over these 2 cypress trees because I wanted to make sure that they weren't. I thought, I've got real money invested in that pot. I had to have that pot shipped from Florida. That pot came from Weigert's. It's full of akadama, which is the wrong medium. Fine akadama when you're looking to build a lot of lumber was a bad move. I thought it was a luxury move, so I was going to go all out, and I wasted money on that. And it'll probably overall slows down the growth and doesn't speed it up, but it's not killing it either. They're happy and they're making fine roots, and those fine roots are not exactly what we need when it comes to making big pieces. That was my mistake. Anyway, we were talking about the lights. So it wasn't a couple of weeks in that I went, I'm not comfortable waiting to see whether or not these trees suffer underneath those LED fluorescent replicants. So I went ahead and ordered these 2, and by these 2, these are 740 watt full spectrum LEDs. They don't weigh very much, and they're the kind of thing that you would use if you had a warehouse grow or something. They're some pretty badass grow lights. Like I said, they're 740 watt full spectrum. So it's very much, it's not, it doesn't say it's a daylight spectrum. It says it's full spectrum. And I would say on a cloudy day, you can definitely tell that these lights produce, mostly to the naked eye, a very daylight look. It's more lean towards things that plants like, that we don't pay a whole lot of, that we as humans don't pay a whole lot of attention to. So, but yeah, and they are both on a timer. They're 740 watts. So you count amperage, you would say 10 amps per every 1,000 watts, and 740, 1480. So say 15. So that's going to be about 15 amps. And as luck would have it, they've been running through, I don't know if you can see it in there, they've been running through, you can see those two plugs though, they've been running through a 15 amp timer for about 3 years now. So the timer is at its set right at its max. And but it's, I guess they have a little bit of leeway in that it's more like 1480 than 15. But yeah, so that's how that's done. And I have the timer set just a little bit above the minimum, speak Patricia, above the minimum. Having stated earlier that for our sun-hungry trees, we're going to want at least 6 hours. I've got these guys set on about 7 or 8 hours. And I say that because I fudge it a little bit between summer and winter. And here's another thing that I think is important when it comes. So these guys, no matter how much the sun reaches in or doesn't reach in, and no matter how much of this is the golden real estate or not the golden real estate, everybody is going to get a good bit of sunlight every day. Everybody is going to reach their minimum. And these two LEDs are going to make sure that, also being LEDs, they make no heat, like none. I will see little birds actually sitting on these things while they're lit, and zero F's on there. They just could care less if they're burning. So no heat, which also means that as an indoor grow light, you don't have the things that would be associated with that heat. In the days of old, to get an exposure like that, you would have to have something like a metal halide or a sodium vapor. Those would make your meter spin like a frisbee. They were huge power hogs. They also would make a huge amount of heat, which would cause a lot of evaporation, both aspiration through your leaves, but also the surface area. Those would evaporate off, which would cause your humidity to just bump way up. So in a house, for instance, if you had to try to do something like this for tropicals, you're also going, and you would have heat issues, and you would have the humidity associated with those heat issues. Literally, you would have to be dealing with fungus wanting to grow on stuff inside. So these being LEDs and not bringing the heat to the table means that just saves us so much and so many hassles. Also, there's no wear and tear that's associated with heat. Heat just breaks stuff down. So that is my way to go. If you want to have a nice collection of trees and you do not want to worry about whether or not they're gradually getting weaker because of a lack of light, then you might look at a LED for a tree, like a little LED over a tree that you have in a window or something, or in that space in a balcony that you worry. Maybe that's a better space than it is a light source. So for whatever reason, so yeah, that LED light might be might be your saving grace there. And this is certainly, you know, it's only in the last few years that we've had this as an option because of the reasons that I stated earlier about those other lights, which were just ovens. They were just, yeah. Quick glance at our cork bark oak that we did a lot of cut back to. It's looking spry. I would expect it to flush back out quite a bit. It's still, the funny thing is even after all of that amount of cutback, it still seems to go through the same amount of water, which is not typical of most trees. After a heavy prune, you find that your water use just goes down as your leaf count goes down. All right, so that's how we were able to handle the lighting situation without ever having to worry about losing a tree because our balcony was partially covered. And the other side of that is, as I touched on earlier, that the lights are on about 7 to 8 hours a day. I could get away with them being on for 6, but they're not killing me at 8. So that's just a little making sure everybody, and what I see here is that for the most part, the trees grow the same inside as they do on the side that faces outside. The biggest perimeter here is whenever I go walking through here, I affect growth on that side of the trees more than the amount of light. So as somebody who keeps walking through here, I'm kind of carving a path that shows up on my trees. Also, I've been cutting back. I've got a lot of bare here. As I've been cutting back some of the stuff that we built the last couple of years that was ramified in lieu of things that are longer and straighter that have just been coming out this year. And so that's got us looking a little lumpy at the moment. But yeah, quite often I will see the grow light side of the trees, and I rotate the trees whenever possible. These guys I can't rotate. I rotate this guy every payday, as I do some of my pines. It's just how I remember to rotate the trees. And I'm not seeing a lot of difference in growth between the sun side and the grow light side. What I do see is the difference in wind. Causes the outside on a breezy day they can dry out easier. I don't think it's wind damage per se. It's just that they go through water so much that side will show heat damage. I mean wind damage, but not the blister like you think. They just go dry. So that's what I've noticed there. It's usually not anything too horribly horrific. Now, watering. It's not just me here. Like I said earlier, I'm on the 4th floor, so there's 3 apartments underneath here and a parking deck. So I can't go pouring water over the side. And what I was originally told was whenever I put the trees on the rail, we were originally told in a memo for everybody to take their trees off the rail. I think if I were to pan around there, you could probably see a couple of balconies out there that have trees on their rail. And when push comes to shove, the guys usually just tell you to put a drip tray that works underneath the trees, so to save the paint on their painted rail, which is not a bad way to go. However, I had problems. One, that would limit the amount of trees that I could have to the amount of trees that could get sun here on the rail. And 2, I was concerned about trees going over the rail because that did look kind of risky, and I'm 4 floors up. It's just like, I think the odds, there's not a lot of traffic underneath this apartment. It's the back of this building. So it's not like it's a high traffic area, but anything that goes over the side would not survive. It's that far up. So, I'm concerned about it potentially doing some harm to someone and or it not making it once it gets to that sudden stop. So that seemed like a good time. What you see right here, that is what's called a scaffolding jack, and that has a piece of 1-inch pipe sitting on top of it, which would replicate what it does on a piece of scaffolding. This is also a scaffolding jack, but this is one that's left over and you would build scaffolding on that and use that large butterfly screw to raise and lower the pipe leg that scaffolding is made out of, much like I'm using it on that piece of pipe to support this rail, and I'm using it to adjust the angle. This rail wasn't something that I built level. This rail, and it's what I'm calling the rail, is my own part of the bench here. And this is copper. This is a sheet of copper that came in a roll like aluminum foil, and I laid it over this edge and rolled it out that way, and it goes all the way over to that other edge and comes up and makes a copper gutter. And I have jacks like that located. There's one in my vat there on the corner. There's one back here. There's one back there in the middle. There's one there. There's two over there. And there's one in the corner over there. So what those do is, in this case, I've got that end higher than this end, and I have that vat that you can barely see down there with a hole in the trough over the vat. So everything that gets watered goes through the pots, goes through the gutter, goes down my gutter from the high end to the low end, and drops through that hole and fills up. In the winter, that fills up from rainfall. But it's just rainwater and or my water from watering here, so it doesn't cause an issue, but it keeps me from hosing down my neighbor's place downstairs every time I water. I do have to be concerned about the amount of water that comes out of the bald cypress, so I have drip trays underneath it, and that has always been able to take care of it. They're nothing but like lasagna dishes underneath here, but most of one of those, that big green watering can, most of one of those every time I water goes into the bald cypress, and the lasagna dish underneath takes care of our leftovers so far. I haven't had to worry about that. You can also see that there's substrate and stuff down there that gives all of the little trees on this rail and a place for an escape route, except for the ones that are also in little baking dishes, and that gives and they have substrate in them, which is our little hedge with mames and show hens to give them escape routes so that they have a little hedge against high heat, and that also helps to keep the pots cool if they're in cool substrate. And I don't leave those substrates full of water for say. It just runs out of the trees when I water them, and then lingers in there longer. So as these guys dry out, their last little thing is to send escape routes down there to kind of get the last little bit of goodie between then and the next watering. And that is a trick. The little trick about using drip trays with substrate in them to help your tiny trees survive, like in summer and stuff. That's a little tip I got from Eric Schrey at Bonsai. And you can see that in action. And that is pretty much, here's the other support. I'm probably going to do some work here later on. I am looking to make 2 more supports for the rig, and I want to take it closer to the wall, about to here, so that I'm not wasting all of this prime space. And then I intend to take that little upright of blocks down and take that jack and take it closer to the wall, and then that'll give up. See, I'm giving up good growth space there and back over there, and I'll put all of that back into play by moving those braces back. But I don't want to move those braces back. I want to replace them, and in replacing them, I will build the rig that I want that to be, and attach it to the lights, and then I will disassemble the old rig, kind of like I think they do bridges in a way. Kind of going through here, getting some of our totally straight up branches, not wanting to get too carried away. That's not and it's not why we're here today necessarily. But yeah, this is the mechanics. This is the mechanics of our balcony. I have been growing here for. I have been growing trees here for over 5 years. We've been doing videos here for 5 years. We've done about 800 bonsai videos. Golly, really and it's been my pleasure. The side to that is it is a great way to watch over time to see how your trees are doing. I can go back and really gauge. It makes it a lot easier to go back through and gauge how our guys have been looking over the years. And, we've got some pretty good sized projects here. This is a large Yamadori. This is a trident maple. It's several years old. We've got a layer going on there. It occupies the space in the back corner and seems to be enjoying the light. Nothing seems to be trying to grow back over. It's perfectly happy with the back lot, as is my trident, as is my John Redwood, and as is my little Japanese black pine seedlings. These guys all seem to be currently pretty happy in their locations. And so I don't think that's kind of our shtick. We don't have an acre. We don't have a whole lot of yard or a yard. What we have is a balcony. And I once asked my teacher, I said, what would you do if you lost your garden and had an apartment with, what would you do if you had a window? And he goes, I guess I would take my 3 best trees. And there was your answer. So by lighting this balcony, I was able to kind of jump ahead and expand my grow area, while at the same time being mindful of trying to see how the things do, or do they try to lean their way towards the light, the outside light? No, they seem to be equally pretty happy, one side versus the other, and I'm not noticing anything is anemic because it's growing underneath my LEDs. So I would say this is a big success. I don't know how much. I don't know if this is overkill. I don't know how much overkill this is. It might have been that my 2 4-foot LED fluorescent fixtures would have been fine, but these trees and their well-being was very important to me. I had a lot invested in them emotionally and in this build, frankly. So it just didn't seem, 1 month led to actually just a few weeks in of looking at it. I'm going, I think that's enough. They certainly look good lit, but I don't want to find out. The amount of time it'll take me to find out whether or not this is good or not. Maybe I should just bite the bullet and replace them with some heavy hitters, which is what I did, and I've been really happy with the results. Those are called F1s, I believe. They're 740 watt full spectrum. Like I said, I have them growing on a timer. It's really important to me that the trees do not know when it is or what's going on based on my little timer. The timer goes off. The lights come on several hours after the sun comes up. And the lights go off around 4 o'clock right now in the summer. It gets dark here about 9. These lights go off around 4 o'clock. So what the sun does tells them it's the end of the day, and what the sun does tells them that it's the beginning of the day. And I'm not messing with the timing of the trees or their hormonal allocation by flashing them with daylight at hours that they would not be expecting. So that is a quick rundown of of how I evolved everything that we did to with the lights and with the grow gutter tray. That was all in the hopes of increasing our amount of growth space so that we could have more trees. And I think we've been largely successful with those. It could use some modification. Like I said, I could probably better fill this space by taking that jack back there and putting it down on the ground behind here and having that upright come up, and then it would be different than that conduit that I'm using there. I actually broke some of that last year at a junction. So this has been a pretty good solid rig, but I wasn't wanking with it, and I shouldn't have been, and I broke a coupler that couples those pipes together, and that wasn't good. With all of these lights up, I had my lights go over the side, but everything was safety, so they did go over the side, but they didn't go any farther than over the side. Basically, those things just kind of laid over that way. And it was exciting. Got a call from the office going, "Are you okay up there, Patricia?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're okay. Nothing to see up here. Mind your own business." Like and subscribe if you guys haven't already. Our next drop will be this weekend. This is our little day off Wednesday drop. I look forward to this weekend. I'm not really sure what we're going to do on this weekend's drop, but I'm sure it'll be something fantastic. I think the weather has just been great here as of late. I've really been enjoying the, like today, mid 70s. Also, it is my birthday. I am an older person today. I am a 66-year-old person today. So yeah, like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop, like I said, would be this weekend. I appreciate you. Frida, Reba Darcy, appreciates you. And thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been my pleasure. Yeah, this has really been my pleasure.